have to do with key decisions, key cards in the past that haven't really worked out, and you've seen a few of my rants on other games that I think really deserve it. Today, I want to give you guys the main things that really frustrate me when I play Hearthstone, so you guys can understand where I'm coming from, where I'm like a bit salty in some games, why I get a bit upset playing Hearthstone, and basically I think it's going to act as kind of the measure, at least it acts for me, as the quality of the state of the game of Hearthstone. Now, before I talk about all the things I dislike in Hearthstone, you have to keep in mind, Hearthstone is a very good game. I'm very happy playing the game after all of these years. Overall, it's great stuff. There's been a lot of complaints from the Karazhan expansion, but we've had great expansions, we've had not so great expansions, and Karazhan is just a not so great expansion. And overall, I'm going to keep things a bit constructive as well. So there's kind of like three things that really bother me with Hearthstone that more or less come together to deliver a bit of a negative experience sometimes. So the first thing that has gone on a downtrend over time is the amount of randomness in the game. And originally, most of the randomness started to be implemented in Hearthstone with the Goblin vs. Gnomes expansion, and a lot of those random factors were just kind of hilarious and really crazy. And, you know, we thought it might just be a bit temporary because it's Goblin vs. Gnomes, it's crazy, random stuff, blowing up, whatever. You know, we kind of got that idea. But it hasn't really been on a downtrend since then. The randomness aspect in the game has kind of continued, and a lot of it has gone into, like, just card draw RNG because the game has become faster and faster and faster. On top of it, still remaining about as random. And, this is a bit of an issue. It's a bit of an issue for constructed play primarily. If you look at the tournament records of some of the best players in the world, it's pretty clear. So, you know, for instance, you can look at Life Coach's tournament record and see he has an all-time win rate of 57%. And he's one of the best constructed players in the world. So, in the tournament scene, he's winning barely over half his games. And, you know, that's obviously pretty good in terms of a comparative standard, but you would think you'd win a little bit more if you were one of the all-time best Hearthstone tournament players ever. And in the past, it did have better records. I know that, you know, 2 years ago, around that time, when Ghost Gamers started to have their rankings, a lot of the top players were in the mid-60s, some even the high 60s, and it was pretty widespread. Today we have a few players who are over 60% win rate, but they're primarily players who have played a very small sample size of games and generally just won like 2 tournaments and did well in both of them. So just kind of like temporary win rate. Overall, we've seen the average win rate of the best players in the game go down, and that has made it so a bit of an issue with tournament scene where it is noticeably more random on who it is. And randomness is fine, it's just there's a bit of a limit, right? You don't want to just have a coin flipping contest, you know, nobody's going to watch that. So it's a fine balance, and I think we had a better style of Hearthstone where players could actually highlight their ability to play the game and have results from it. Which brings me to point number 2. The main issue that I think exists in constructed Hearthstone is that, for whatever reason, maybe it's coincidence, but it's happened so many times, again and again and again, that the absolute best decks in the game are also the easiest ones to play. And this has kind of made an experience where you don't feel challenged to actually play the game, because you know if you come up with a cool deck that's actually difficult to play, you're at a considerable disadvantage to players who really are generally pretty new at the game, don't even know too many concepts, but are playing a deck that's powerful and very easy to play. Hearthstone, much like a lot of Blizzard games when it came out and in the first few expansions, did follow the Blizzard theme. You know, easy to learn, hard to master. But these days, and in the last couple of years honestly, that has not been the case at all. So right now we know that the mid-range Shaman is kind of a catch-all deck. There's very few decks that counter it. The decks that counter it are actually a bit hard to play and have significant disadvantages in other matchups. So it becomes a situation where really you're better off playing mid-range Shaman over anything else you might have in mind. And in the past, we had, very similar decks, very dominant decks that were just obscenely easy to play. In Whispers of the Old Gods, we had just the aggro Shaman, which I would argue was even easier to play than mid-range Shaman. And before that, we had the Secret Paladin, which was one of the easiest decks to ever play, ever. Before that, we actually had the Patron Warrior, which was a very hard deck to play, but, it stayed in the meta as number one, and that people got practice. Overall, I think that deck was pretty good. I really liked the aspect that a combo deck, a very difficult to play deck, was actually the highlight of the game, where, players who were really good at the game could use their skills to actually win a lot more than the average player. But much like all the other combo decks in the game, that was completely nerfed into oblivion. And before that, we had like Undertaker, Zoo, all the shenanigans, that once again, the easiest decks in the game, to play at least, are also the best. And this creates a situation where it's just so frustrating to just constantly lose to random effects and just random players, same decks, even though you try your best and you have the experience and you have the skill. You can't really make use of them in Hearthstone, and that is a bit of a problem. Coming together with the last point, it creates the main negative experience in this game. I talked about how I enjoy Arena. I think I used to. You can't enjoy every game in Hearthstone. Some games you just get completely screwed. In terms of Arena, I think in the height of Hearthstone, I enjoyed as much as 80% of the games that I played. I think Whisper of the Old Gods was an excellent expansion as far as Arena is concerned, where that percentage was pretty close to that 80%. But in Karazhan and some of the others, and particularly right now, it's at an all-time low. In Arena, and much like in Constructed, it's very easy to create a deck, it's very easy to draft. A lot of people use Hearth Arena, but it's not Hearth Arena's problem, it's just that drafting is really easy because there's only one way to really win, and that's to curve out better and more consistently than your opponent. So, yes, if you get lucky and you go first and you curve out better than your opponent, your ability to play the game is basically insignificant. And the experiences created in this environment in Arena that creates so many negative experiences, and in Constructed as well, is that the games just feel cheap. So when you lose, if you're a good player, it's generally going to be just bullshit RNG, bullshit draws. You just have bullshit losses. But when you win, you're generally going to win off that same RNG, off that same perfect curve, off these same super easy to play decks. So even your victories, while obviously they're not going to feel quite as bad as losing in that fashion, but the victories also, a lot of them these days, and a lot of them in the recent past, just also don't feel very satisfying. A satisfying game of Hearthstone is where one player takes advantage of a difficult situation, makes tough decisions, makes tough risks, plays a deck that actually has them in these situations, has them choosing between many very significant options, and being rewarded for their guesses, their ability to combo cards, their ability to analyze the current situation. So the games that are satisfying are games where a good player gets to highlight his skill. And, obviously I get a few of these games, but far less than before. And when it comes to the receiving end, once again, far less than before. These aspects of showing your skill, showing your mastery of Hearthstone has such a small impact on games recently, and has such a small impact on the outcome. And that just creates an experience that is more consistently negative than positive, especially compared to a few years ago. And the last thing kind of on my list that, I think should be mentioned because it does feel also a little bit cheap. Hearthstone's a digital card game. We get cards in every expansion, and there's a lot of aspects to these cards that just, I feel it's absolutely no attention. The last part of Hearthstone that I think a lot of us really enjoy is the exploration factor. You might play against the stupidest, most powerful deck that's like no skill, curve out, whatever, win most of the time, and you can just be one of these players that just likes to play really, really cool combo decks. And generally you do this by playing some hipster cards, some hipster combos, and I feel like this opportunity is missed so frequently. So my main criticism is that, yes, not all the cards that come into expansion sets are going to be very good cards. Obviously. Some of them are just going to be terrible. In some cases, if you consider the balance and the rarity structure of Arena, some classes actually should get terrible cards, and that's a very interesting concept. So, a card that I think is very successfully terrible is Shatter. So, when Shatter came out, Whispers the Old Gods, Mage was still one of the most dominant classes, and they got some pretty good cards in that expansion, but they also got Shatter in the common slot, so it kind of balanced out in their Arena performance because this card would show up so frequently and would overall lower the quality of your draft significantly in some cases. So in Arena, it did a great job of being just a bad card that requires you to combo things. And in Constructed, it was generally a pretty worthless card, but it was a card that you can make just a crazy hipster deck and surprise your opponents, and you could have that very high satisfaction game by playing some of these weird cards because they're really cool, they're really useful, they're generally terrible, but not necessarily in every situation. You can have that level of fun, you can have that level of exploration and enjoyment in Hearthstone using these cards. However, most of the bad cards that are introduced in Hearthstone are bad for no reason and have no cool factor, no synergy, they just suck. So I feel like some cards just have absolutely no place in the game whatsoever. So I can give you guys a few examples from the upcoming Mean Streets of Gadsden expansion. There's Grook Fu Master. Why does this card exist? You're not going to be happy getting it in Arena. You're not going to play in Constructed. If you want to have win through your combo decks, you're just going to play other cards. This card just has absolutely no purpose whatsoever, no enjoyment, nothing. The card is just completely pointless. And there's the new Leper Gnome. What's the point of printing a card on such a ridiculously low power level that doesn't have a cool and unusual and hipster synergistic effect? It has nothing. This is just wasted slots. And I feel like the previous expansion had a lot fewer of these. It definitely had their bad cards. It definitely had the cards that were obviously bad, but they were so entertaining when they actually worked. So if you guys can remember cards like, Hemet, for instance. Hemet is a terrible card. Very few people actually play Beasts, but, you could get Hemet through a few different random effects, and when it would land, or if you just kept playing against Druid, some people actually teched Hemet to deal with Druid the Claws and other beasts that Druid played. It would be such a satisfying moment to play your hipster deck and succeed. So I feel like not only does Hearthstone no longer capitalize and encourage all these amazing experiences that seem to happen at a bit of a lower rate, because there seems to be more of a focus on making decks that are easy to play really good, rather than decks that are hard to play very good. And all these different things come together to deliver a lot more very whatever or negative gaming experience rather than positive ones. So that's kind of how I felt. I do sincerely hope that Mean Streets of Gadsden changes this. It's obviously too difficult to tell what effect it would have on the game, but as a few of the other recent expansions, it seems like, at least on the very crappy cards in the set, they could be improved a little bit. So we'll see how the rest turns out. I hope for the best. I hope you guys have enjoyed my thoughts, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Play Zoo. There's actually some things. Basically, save usage. I don't know how good it is, but it's really good against like the mirror and shamans compared to other stuff that you play, so I like it. There's like too many people coming. See-through computer kids here. So they want soul from and thanks to it to not keep.
A clever strategy.
I did notice in my last run though people were saying like the shaman players were pretty bad compared to even compared to the second players they were facing were supposed to be failing. So maybe it's not as bad. I should just get another monitor. Actually I have two other monitors right there, but my plan was to not check the chat every single, like between every single turn, because then I would play worse.
I shall land shortly, and I expect your welcome.
But now it's yeah, it just started, so everyone's talking now. This coin. If you just place Tongo, you can value trade into the end if I hit. But nah, that's fine because I'll have naturally on board.
Well done.
Yeah, it's too bad to not hit because if I play Juggler, the coins Thrall, and the value plays into my Juggler, then I'm like really fine. I mean, I choose to only have one monitor because otherwise I get distracted. So, yeah. When I stream, I might set it because then I'll probably learn it well. Oh, you play window mode? And that's the thing. I don't know if that's a fuck up for the stream. What do I do now? Like a small window. Whatever, I'll get that sorted for next stream.
Celebration is in order.
Okay. Thinking. Probably right. Because of the Juggler. It's actually not that bad. But like having two monitors and playing one in was basically the same thing. Get completely distracted. Storm's not that good. I guess both hand storm is kind of good for him.